Yeah, it always comes. It goes by too fast.
Are we live? Okay. Hey, good morning. Welcome to the Stokastic.com NFL Showdown Strategy Show. Bengals-Cowboys. You know what? Might look like an ugly game between two losing teams this year, but guess what? 49.5 point total. A guy that would probably be in a two-horse race for the MVP along with Josh Allen had his defense not been absolutely abysmal. So you might see some offense in this game. This could be a fun one, and I'm ready to dive into it. I'm Dave Loughran, and that's Matt Gajewski. As always, you just said it before we got started. It's sad that we're this far into the season already. Dude, this is the last game of week 14.
I know, man. College football's over. Everything is postseason now. Transfer portal opens today. It's a turning of the page on the calendar, and NFL is not far behind that. So we got to cherish every single game we get, even if it's between two teams that aren't playoff bound, despite what they want to tell themselves.
Yeah, I guess they're not officially. I think they have before this week started, I know the Bengals had a 4% chance, the Cowboys had a 3% chance. So, yeah. So the transfer portal, I don't pay a ton of attention to college.
Of course not.
Is that like an exciting time for you, like to see where players go?
I love it. A lot of people hate it, but my whole philosophy with college football is I don't care about a lot of the inner workings of the sport, the changes. As long as they show up every Saturday and play a full slate of games, I'm cool with it. I actually kind of like the transfer portal from a sickos perspective because I'm super into recruiting. And during the transfer portal cycle, when teams are depleted and guys leave and they still have to play in a bowl game, you get a look at like some awesome freshmen from the previous cycle. You get a look at next year's roster, which, I mean, diehard fans of this sport seem to hate, but I love seeing the young kids play. I don't care who plays as long as they're playing.
Okay. Very nice. It's time to get into it. And, well, I'm telling you, I think we have actually a pretty fun slate upon us. And you don't have to get excited about Cooper Rush or anything like that. But there's some moving parts in this game, so we'll dig into all of them. Happy to have you guys here. If you don't mind, take a single second. Coming off the weekend, atone for your sins this morning. Hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, help us feed the algo. Yes, it goes a long way. Otherwise, I'd never ask. It's free to do as well. Both of them, believe it or not, even subscribing. And leave a comment down below. Thoughts on this slate? What do you got? Where are you going with? Anything specific, or even just to say hi to Matt and myself? All of that is appreciated. I try and read and respond to all of them on top of that. But yeah, man. So interesting game. You're always going to have some big prize pools on these Monday night football games for sure. Only one game in the NBA tonight as well. It's that tournament or whatever they're doing. And
their failure to draw up interest this time of year sounds about right.
I'm telling you, I don't just start the season around Christmas time like they did post bubble year. Start the season around Christmas. Remember, 3 years ago, they started it through 2 days before Christmas. So then you got the whole summer, really not even the whole summer. You've got everything to yourself, everything, especially as you start to get into the full swing of things with the NBA. Then the Super Bowl's over. All of that is done with. Dude, start the season in the end of the year and just run it a little bit more into the summer. I don't get it. It would be perfect, Matt.
You and I have literally had the same discussion. They're just costing themselves money. You could compete with baseball, the sport that no one cares about.
Right.
Instead, you're competing with the sport that literally everyone cares about. Like they have their stupid in-game championship, which I guess the players make some extra money, so good for them. Like this game between two awful teams is going to body them for viewership. Absolutely dominate them in terms of viewership.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you got? This and then Knicks Raptors tonight or something? Like, who cares? And listen, we're both saying the same thing. It's not like disparaging the NBA. I love the NBA. I like baseball too, but to pretend that like baseball is a threat to basketball compared to football, that's insane. Not to mention, we've already seen it. Like the NFL is only going to continue to do more things where they're opening up more windows for games to be played on non-Thursday, Monday, and Sundays, right? So now you're just going to have more like Friday night football in the future. It's going to happen. You know, just make more money, right? And you're just going to see more football on more days. Just push the season back. And I'm sure like you have your baseball purists being like, oh, what are you talking about? No one cares about baseball. Listen, man, on the whole, nobody cares about like Sunday night baseball. Nobody gives it, like if it's not their team, no one cares about that. Football's still the king. So just push the season back. Plus, then I can focus more on basketball in the offseason for football. And it's a win-win. But anyway, I don't even know where I was going with that, Matt. You're right. This crappy game will crush rate. It will crush everything else. And that's the way it is. But it's the only thing in town. It's the only show in town tonight. Now, can we dig into the injuries a little bit here first?
Absolutely. It's a good place to start.
Yeah, I think on both offensive lines is the best place to start. I would CeeDee Lamb's off the injury report. Guy plays through a lot. But you have Orlando Brown Jr., who missed 3 games, then came back and played last week against Pittsburgh, and then is ruled out again this week with a fibula injury. In the 3 games he's missed this year, no quarterback's been pressured at a higher rate than Burrow. But guess what? No quarterback in the league has been better under pressure than Joe Burrow this season either. So take either side of that for what you will. On the other side, Zach Martin's out, and my guess, Tyler Guyton, who hasn't practiced even in a limited fashion all week, I think he's going to be out as well. So the offensive line's both dealing with some injuries in this one tonight.
And I think you'd probably be a little more worried with the Cincinnati side because they're just facing a formidable pass rush on the other side. Right now, you have a top 5 unit still, despite injuries all season long. On the Dallas side, they're still top 5 in overall pass rush efficiency, whereas Cincinnati ranks 27th. So I'm still not as worried about this on Dallas's offensive line. But with Cincinnati, man, like this could be a game-wrecking mismatch. And Burrow's going to have to continue to be elite for this not to matter. You mentioned he's been great under pressure. They're just extremely lucky they have him. Otherwise, they might be winless.
Big time.
Because, man, and they've been in some of these matchups before and manufactured enough stuff to put points on the board, which they'll have to do again. This is a huge mismatch. And it'll be interesting because a lot of the slate is going to come down to what studs you play, but getting a little contrarian, playing some defenses like Dallas, I think could make some sense. This is a pretty high total. Defenses might come in a little under-owned, you know, with this sitting at 49.5 and the overtaking money.
Yeah, I think you're right. The Bengals are 9-3 to the over this year. Cowboys are 8-4 to the over this year. I'm always interested. Like Burrow's so good, and he has been pressured a lot. You're right. They're so lucky they have him because it's not like he's a mobile quarterback, Matt, but he's also not immobile in the pocket, right? He's not Kirk Cousins in the pocket. He can still get around a little bit. And I was looking on PFF at his numbers this morning because I was doing the betting video for over on the Odd Shopper channel. Come check that out, by the way, if you haven't done so yet. It'll be out at 11 Eastern. So right before this show is over. And come say hi in the comments. I know you guys. I know a name when I see him. So, all right, let's look at it like this. I'm looking at PFF, and this dude's numbers under pressure, Matt. Like they're seriously insane. He's been sacked a good amount, but it doesn't take away from how good he's been. Second in passer rating. He has an 11-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio under pressure. He's been one of, if not the best quarterback against the blitz. Cowboys blitz at an above average clip. I think 10th most highest blitz rate in the league. So when you look at all that stuff, yes, the Micah Parsons effect with Orlando Brown out is real for sure. But I'm not going, well, I don't think I want to play Joe Burrow today. I almost don't even think it's insane to play Burrow and the Cowboys defense in some spots if you wanted to. Like maybe they get a scoop and score. Maybe they have a defensive touchdown and Burrow still goes on to throw 3 of them. I think there's a lot of different ways to do it, man.
I agree with you. I think there's a lot of ways to play today's slate, and there's a lot of ways this can go. And because of that, I think you should be very cognizant of how you're building lineups. I don't think you necessarily need to like limit Burrow in the Cowboys defense by any means, but you could see a version of this game where they are at least hampered by that pass rush unit on the other side. With that said, the environmental factors are still pretty good for Cincinnati's offense. They're 5.5-point favorites. Dallas has taken a little bit of money, but they're still going to be considerably favored by the time this game kicks off. Total's good. They've been able to still win in these matchups. They can lean on some of their playmakers and get the ball out fast. You have T. Higgins, Chase Brown, Jamar Chase. You don't need to run these late developing route concepts downfield. And that's part of what they've done is they've just played to get the ball out of Burrow's hands quickly into the hands of playmakers, which they should do again. So you still have a lot of interest in them. It's just if you do want to take a contrarian stand, I think Dallas perhaps has success on defense via the pass rush. I think that's fine. And then the Bengals team has been so bad. I mean, you could also just play Dallas onslaughts at the expense of some Bengals players. It's going to be a little tricky because they're not favored, but this defense has been so bad. You wouldn't be surprised if Dallas maybe even just straight up won this game, depending on how it goes.
I hear you. And like, I was surprised to see CD with a 66.5-yard receiving prop, just because like if he stays out there all game, why would Cooper Rush not just pepper him? You know, he's been targeted on 27% of routes run since Cooper Rush took over. And you've seen this too. They're letting Cooper Rush just throw the football as much as he wants. It doesn't mean he's going to be particularly good. He's totally immobile, but he's going to throw. And if you've got a Bengals team that can put points on the board, we expect them to do it. You know, there's going to be a lot of options today. I want to start at wide receiver. Before we do though, just a couple comments in chat. Morning, everybody, by the way. Glad you guys are hanging out. And when I say morning, fellas, there's always a few ladies that go, what about us? Fellas is just, it encompasses everything. Because I'm not a ladies and gentlemen or boys and girls type thing. You know what I mean, Matt? It's just it means you too. It means everybody. Most people know that.
I do that a lot by saying guys, and then I think it refers to me. Like, what's up, guys?
Is the same thing. Any chick watching this show, I can say that, right? Like they're one of us. So everybody counts. Anyway, we had somebody say, newbie here, can you help me make picks? Or how can someone make me help picks? And then G Joyner said, get the deal for what it's worth. Tool the Stokastic can do it for $5 signing up at a sportsbook. Very well worth it. And our boy Nate said, Laffy, I've been using the single entry sims this week for the first time, and it's been far and away my best week of NFL on both sites. I love to see that, man. I love to see that. As always, Matt will tell you, he told his friends they didn't believe him. You want to get a free month of our tools? You want to get multiple free months of our tools? The core package, core monthly package, normally $99. If you use that link in the description or the one Jordan will throw in the chat, it's the first one. Okay. First link, click that. There's 4 steps on how you are legitimately just getting it for free. $100 value. Go on and click claim offer when you click that link on any of our sportsbook partners, or even if you're in a non-legal betting state, any of the pick'em sites, Underdog, Sleeper, Prize Picks, whatever it may be. Sign up on any of them, right? You got to click claim offer or else we can't track it. It doesn't count. Deposit like the $5 or $10 minimum. Not only are you getting a free month of core, or if you sign up, let's say you're not on 4 of them. You sign up on 4 of them, you spend like $30 total. That's 4 full months of core for any sport. Say you're like, I want basketball, I want football, I even want MMA sims, and I want hockey package too. That's 4 months right there, $400 value. Or you want to just run out NFL for the next 2 months, regular season, get the Christmas games, get the Friday games, get the playoff games, all of that, and NBA, that's it. Go and click claim offer, make your deposit. It takes a minute to sign up. For those of you guys in chat that did it, you already know. $5 or $10 deposit usually. Take whatever you deposited or take the minimum bet, put it down on whatever you want. Live bet, doesn't matter. It can be Turkish ping pong. The moment that bet settles, email us at support@stokastic.com. See those 4 simple steps and just take a screenshot of your first settled bet and of your welcome email. Email us, let us know what sports you want. You literally have the month or months, depending on how many you sign up on, 100% for free. Matt, I'd say that's a pretty good deal. The best one we've ever done, as a matter of fact.
That's exactly what I was going to say. You've never had a better opportunity, not only to take advantage of offerings that you want to play on these sports books to begin with. Now you're going to get our tools in addition to those. I mean, you can't beat it. And who knows how long we're going to have this. Take advantage of it before it's gone.
Yeah, man. It's awesome. Plus, join the Discord. It comes with all of these. hit us up if you have questions. There's some really sharp people in there, and many that are willing to help you learn. Greg's in there doing office hours. Steve Buzzard, one of the best DFS players ever, he does it as well. So you're not just getting thrown to the wolves and like, oh shit, what do I do? No, we got tutorials. We've got everything to work it in and shorten up that learning curve. Anyway, let's get into it. I want to talk, like I said, first link in the description. You'll see it down there. I want to talk about the pass catchers for Cincinnati. I have a sneaky suspicion you're going to agree with me because Jamar Chase is on this slate. But, you know, I'm not convinced, and maybe I'll get some backlash in chat here as well. That's perfectly fine. I love you guys regardless. I'm just simply not convinced that T. Higgins should be $2,000 less expensive than Jamar Chase. Like in the games that Higgins has played, he has one fewer red zone targets, same amount of end zone targets. He's got double-digit targets in 4 of his last 6. When you look at the concentration of targets on this team, yes, obviously Jamar Chase is a monster. He's fantastic. However, T. Higgins gets a ton of work, and he's awesome. It's just he gets overshadowed by Jamar Chase's excellency.
Yeah, and I don't even know if he should. T. Higgins is excellent himself. I agree with you that they should be closer in price. It's probably just a T. Higgins thing. Jamar, I don't really know if you could say he should be cheaper than he is. He's been a stud when he's been targeted this year, but T's right there. He has more targets than him over the last 2 weeks. Perhaps you give up like a little bit of that game-breaking athleticism. Jamar's very good after the catch, but T is just right there in terms of opportunity. It's hard to discount him. The only thing that I really worry about is this Bengals team as they approach their dead offseason, like T's unsigned, Jamar's unsigned. Are we going to see more Jermaine Burton? Are we going to see more like Yoshivas at some point? Like when is enough enough? And at what point does like T and Chase just stop, like taking themselves out of games at points when they're tired? Like you have no incentive to keep playing. So I'm a little worried about them. Maybe not so much in this game because they technically have that, 4% chance, and any percent chance for an NFL team is enough to try. But I don't know. It's at least on my mind. I'm a little worried about the Bengals and if they're going to continue trotting out all these players 100% of the snaps. Last week, outside of Yoshivas, Jermaine Burton, 2 snaps, Isaiah Williams, 3 snaps. They had T. Higgins and Jamar on the field for 90+% of snaps each. I wouldn't be surprised to see that drop because they're dead.
Me neither, but not tonight.
I think because of that 4% chance, whatever number 3%, whatever it is right now.
Yep.
They'll probably hang on to it. Any percent chance for these guys is, as long as it's not 0, they usually try very hard, but who knows? I don't know. The only reason I think it's still a conversation is because T and Jamar are unsigned.
Yeah, that's another good point. But I look at this and I go, all right, here's the remaining schedule, Matt. It's Cowboys tonight, 5.5-point favorites, then Titans, then Browns in Cincinnati, then Broncos in Cincinnati, and then Steelers, of course, the last game of the season. But if you're in this locker room, you're going, look, it's very unlikely. It's very unlikely. However, we could win out, right? Like they did it before, essentially, a few years ago and made the playoffs. I don't know if that was the year they went on to make the Super Bowl, but I think, look, if they lose today, I see it. 4-9, it's over. Now, in all reality, in all practicality, it's probably over, but I don't think in a game like this, you're going to see any kind of wholesale changes. If they were to lose this game, I would say absolutely, but I don't think this game specifically will be the one.
Yeah, I don't think it's wholesale. I think it's maybe just a couple snaps here, a couple snaps there, and then probably wholesale after today.
Agreed. But look, I love Jamar Chase. I love T. Higgins. I just think T. Higgins at 9,600 with the amount of work you've seen from this guy, the amount of opportunity he gets in the red zone, right? Like he has 5 touchdowns over his last 5 games. So as good as Jamar Chase is, I just don't think it's worth ignoring. Like they haven't been that different outside of that one massive Jamar Chase game, right? And I don't even include T. Higgins' first game against Washington because, he played a lot of snaps, but they clearly weren't really doing anything special with him in that spot. after that, 10, 14, 7, 8, 13, 10 targets. Yeah, 9,400. I like him. And I'll tell you what, when I ran the Sims, things can change throughout the day, but I'm getting, let's see, flex and captain. I'm pretty equal to Chase and T Higgins at both flex and at captain.
Yeah, you probably want at least one of them in most lineups today. And you probably want Burrow along with them. I like Burrow a little more in the flex. There's very clearly a ceiling on both of these players. The target share is just so condensed between the two of them. Yoshivas is an afterthought. Now that T is back, Jasicki's role is dropped. You still have Sample playing a ton of snaps, so Jasicki's just somewhat limited to begin with. And then they don't throw a ton to their running backs. So just so many targets are funneled between these two. Even if you do siphon off a handful of snaps, they're so involved, I'm not sure it entirely matters. And with their team total where it is, I think they're pretty safe plays. I'm not sure you're really sneaking one by anyone. I expect them both to be pretty owned, but they're good plays for a reason and owned for a reason. If that's the direction you go, no problem with it.
Check this out, by the way. Total receiving yard prop, 79 on Chase, 70 on Higgins. Pretty interesting.
Yeah, makes sense.
6.5 on Chase, 5.5 on Higgins, except Higgins has juice to the over. And also Chase has a better or shorter odds on the touchdown. T Higgins 2+ touchdowns today is 10-1. Very interesting. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's an interesting conversation to have with both of those guys. And then you've got CeeDee Lamb. He has a much worse quarterback, but also facing a terrible defense. Like the Bengals are top 5 in points scored this year. They're 31st in points allowed. It's hard to get away from CeeDee Lamb on top of that. How do you kind of prioritize the high tiered players? Because as far as value goes, there's not a ton of fantastic value on this slate. We can get to some of them, particularly from Dallas, but Burrow's okay. So here are the guys north of 9K in the flex on DraftKings: Dowdle, Higgins, Chase Brown, Joe Burrow, CeeDee Lamb, and Jamar Chase. And all of them are pretty nice looking today.
For sure. And you can only play 3 of them. If you play 4, you're going to punt twice and you'll end up with Deuce Vaughn lineups and some really, really gross stuff that I don't think is super viable. So on DraftKings, you can only play 3 if you're making an actual lineup and you need to parse through them. I think CeeDee's really interesting from a GPP perspective. He's the lowest owned of this group. I'm not really including Dowdle too much in this, but even I guess I should, because Dowdle's projecting for more ownership than CeeDee, which is largely probably a price thing. You have CeeDee 7th in total ownership. We're only projecting 37%, 9 in captain, 28 in flex. The volume is going to be there, assuming CeeDee plays the whole game. You mentioned he's off the injury report. He still might be dealing with something. You never really know. He's been very injured the last couple of games and playing through them and exiting sometimes. But the target share hasn't changed. The efficiency's dropped a little bit, but you sort of have this sliding scale. You have the decreasing efficiency of Cooper Rush under center, but now you're playing the worst secondary in the league. So where does this meet in the middle? Is this secondary just so bad that Cooper Rush, who's shown a pulse against bad defenses, can just throw the ball over the yard, and CeeDee being the main beneficiary of that, probably like 35% of the targets? Or is Cooper Rush just so bad that even Cincinnati can have a good day? I tend to lean towards the former and find CeeDee extremely interesting at the expense of maybe 1 or 2 of the Bengals players in lineups today.
I lean towards the former as well. And I think one of the reasons for that is, regardless of game script, I think it's still possible that Lamb can get there. Like, Cooper Rush isn't good. And, you look at his average depth of target, all that stuff. This is not a guy that's throwing deep downfield. You don't really need that, especially when you've got full PPR. Like last week against Dallas, he didn't need to do much. He wasn't great. Threw for around 200 yards, 247 against Washington, 354 against Houston. Of course, that horrible game against Philly in his first start, but he's been good enough. The problem with CeeDee is the touchdown equity, right? Like Higgins and Chase touchdown equity has got to be, you would think, higher. Let's see, what's CeeDee's touchdown prop today? Because it's -1. Wow. And so -165 in some spots for Jamar, but we'll go Pinnacle with the two-way prop, -147. Higgins is at +135, and CeeDee Lamb is at +172. So not too far off from Higgins there. Obviously, Chase with the shortest odds, but I think everything you said is 100% viable, and they're probably going to throw anyway. I don't see why you'd have less than a 25-30% target share if you're CeeDee Lamb. And I also don't see why he'd play if his shoulder was that big of an issue. Because while sure, they're not completely out of the postseason, Matt, if they win, I just looked it up, even if they win, they have a 3% chance of making the postseason. So wait, right? Like, why would you, unless Jerry Jones is like, dude, get your ass out there. But that's not happening. That's not the case. He wants to play. So assuming he gets through this game, yeah, he's fine. You have to think he's fine.
And like, just for clarity, no injury designation doesn't mean he's not injured. The injury designations are supposed to be like percentiles you play. Questionable is 50%, doubtful is 25% you'll play. And because like he could be like 90% to play, but the fact that he's not listed on the injury report doesn't mean he's not banged up. You don't know. Fred Warner, for example, has been playing with a fractured ankle all season. He hasn't been on the injury report for San Francisco, and that just means he's not missing the game. Anyway, as far as it goes for CeeDee Lamb, I think there's actually some range of outcomes that aren't really captured in the spread and the total. The reason you have better touchdown projections from books, you have better overall projections on Cincinnati is they're 5.5-point favorites. But I think there's very clear outcomes where Dallas could be winning in this game or even just playing from neutral game script and have a little more touchdown equity than the books are indicating. They have a pass rush advantage over an awful Cincinnati offensive line. Cincinnati's defense is horrible, significantly worse than what you're seeing from the Dallas side. Yeah, Joe Burrow's been an absolute wizard this year, and he's basically papered over a lot of the weaknesses of this team. But there's a lot of outcomes where Dallas just has a ton of offensive success. And if they're having offensive success, CD has to be the engine of this. So I have a lot of interest in him. I'm not sure where I'll land. If everything held pat right now, I would probably come down on all of the Cincinnati offensive players and then try to boost CD, try to boost Dowdle, try to boost Cooper Rush a little bit, just in the event that one of those outcomes actually plays out. Because our four most owned guys are the top four Bengals players. I thought I was going to be able to sneak one by people with Chase Brown today, but people are on it. He's the second most owned guy. So right now it seems like Dallas is the best play for a contrarian build if you're playing large field stuff.
Yeah, I agree. It's crazy too. I am getting like almost identical amounts of Lamb, Higgins, and Chase and Jamar Chase.
Yeah, and they're the best plays. If you play this according to the way Vegas projects the game, you want pieces of them. And the beautiful thing about Showdown is, okay, you can play three studs. If you play CeeDee Lamb, you've shaved off a ton of ownership. You can still have something like a T, Joe Burrow stack, fill out the rest of your lineup with mid-price guys. And because you played CD over like Jamar Chase in this instance, you've shaved off a lot of ownership. You should be pretty good for tournaments in a situation like that. And you don't have to play it that way.
No.
That's one of the ways I like playing the slate. Because even when I ran the Sims, it's like 5-1 Dallas, or 5-1 Cincinnati, 4-2 Cincinnati. All these Cincinnati guys. I'm just not sure that the ownership really warrants playing all that Cincinnati together.
And we'll definitely have some updates throughout the day. We always do. This will be more refined as we get closer to lock with the Sims, with the single lineup sim, and things can always change. But with all that in mind, I'm still getting more Chase Brown and Rico Dowdle than any other skill player. Like I'm getting a ton of those guys. And I totally get it. I mean, when you're talking about two running backs right now going up against subpar defenses, subpar run defenses, the offensive line issues are an issue. Orlando Brown is more kind of integral to pass blocking than he is run blocking. He hasn't been a good run blocking anyway. But like Dowdle played 70% of snaps last week, coming off a 22 rushing attempt game, 19 before that. The guy has 22 plus touches in back-to-back games. And then you have Chase Brown, who I know he got, in a sense, like phased out of the ground game last week when they went down early to Pittsburgh. Looked like he was going to have a huge game, by the way. Had like 54 yards and a touchdown in the first drive. But he's still playing ever since Zach Moss went down. Chase Brown has not had a single game with fewer than 80% of snaps played. Now, you talk about Higgins and Jamar Chase. The spot I was wondering more about was less the pass catchers and more, does Khalil Herbert end up getting more work? I was shouting it from the rooftops that Kendre Miller was going to end up getting a lot more work than people anticipated yesterday. And that son of a bitch ended up getting into the end zone on that push. Alvin Kamara, once again, shocking letdown spot. I mean, that guy every single week is chalk, just sucks. But
I didn't play him.
What?
I thought the projections were wrong on him.
I was underweight on well, it wasn't just the projections. The prop market was insane on him. He was like 128 rushing plus receiving. It's crazy.
Well, I mean, those things aren't there. I'll say this about the prop market and projections. If you're paying attention, which a lot of people aren't, they don't have time. I get it. There's money to be made in those markets if you know what's going on with the inner workings of the NFL.
Definitely.
And you can have a read on this by paying attention. The books are extremely efficient, but we beat the books for a reason. They're not 100% accurate.
Yep. And it's not like Kamara didn't still get the lion's share, but the fact, that Miller got one inside the 10 and still ended up with 10 touches, that's more than we've seen from these other guys. Anyway, whatever. I was underweight on Kamara, but the two quality lineups that I had in some of the single entry stuff both had him. So it ended up just like hurting me more than it should have, which that's the give and take of those single entry spots. But no, I guess what I'm saying is, do they just want to keep pounding Chase Brown, or does maybe Khalil Herbert finally get more work this week? I think it's a possibility, not a lot, but I think it's a possibility that he gets more than just a, one attempt.
I think you have to mirror this to your Jamar Chase, CD Lamb, or Jamar Chase, T. Higgins opinion. If you think those guys play 100% of the snaps, I think you have to assume Chase Brown plays 100% of the snaps. I don't think there's wiggled room for both of those situations. It's kind of like either Cincinnati's all in or they're not. And if they're all in, I don't see Khalil Herbert playing more.
Okay. Fair enough.
There's been no indication that they'll do that.
I know. There's been no indication that they do it with anything. If that's the case then, and you're projecting Chase Brown for another 80+% of snaps, the guy once again just becomes a fantastic play. You could almost argue that Chase Brown is underpriced at his current salary with the amount of opportunities that he's been getting in the offense since Zach Moss went down.
Yeah, I thought we were going to be able to sneak one by people with everything you said, but he's the second most on play on the slate, 62%. You're just playing into ownership. So if you do decide to use him, you need to think about the rest of your lineup. Like if you're starting Joe Burrow, Chase Brown, Jamar Chase, unless you found like a 1%er that's going to play a little more than we think, like that lineup's probably pretty dusty unless you're playing small field, cash, stuff like that. So I just thought we would be able to sneak one by people with Chase Brown, considering we have Burrow, Chase, and Higgins, but that's not the case. He's more owned than those players at similar prices. Like Jamar's up to the ceiling with his price, but T's less expensive. I'd rather just play T straight up over Chase Brown right now and save 15% on ownership.
I think the sneakier one is Rico Dowdle.
I agree with that 100%.
Yeah, and it's not, by the way, when you're saying sneak one by, you're not saying like, oh, I thought he'd be 3%. Obviously not.
No.
What you're saying is maybe the Chase Brown wouldn't be the highest owned player. Rico Dowdle, we're projecting at 35% in the flex, 8% in captain. To me, that is very low for, remember when Mike McCarthy said a few weeks ago that Dowdle was going to be like, he's taking over as the lead back? Well, he really has. And I know they've played in a couple favorable game scripts, but I don't see it changing to the point where he isn't just out there. He played 70% of snaps last week, 25 touches in the game. You're getting legit bell cow workload from Rico Dowdle. There's nothing to suggest that this Bengals defense is good at slowing the run. And he's $9,000. Of all of those guys, if you were to ask me who I think the best value is of the higher priced options, say like 8K and above, which there's 7 of them, it's Rico Dowdle to me.
I think Dowdle's interesting. I'm always going to be just like semi-worried about the Zeke stuff.
I think Zeke's toast, man.
Zeke's been toast.
No, but I actually think that I know it sounds crazy, I actually think this team, with Jerry Jones watching them from above, Eagle Eye Jones up there, I really think that they're trying to make a push. And like
So is this Jones telling McCarthy to play Dowdle? Like why did Mike McCarthy change his mind suddenly?
because eventually you get to a point where absolutely nothing's working, and maybe this is maybe who
That could be.
I don't know what the answer to that is, but I do know that when I look at these games, I see that Rico Dowdle has 41 carries over the last 2 games, and actually let's take the last 3 games. So Rico Dowdle over the last 3 games. I'm using the last 3 for what it's worth because so the last 3 games, they're 2-1. He had 22, 19, and 10. Of course, they were getting clobbered by Houston, but you're still talking about 51 total carries. Elliott has 6. So I have enough, in my opinion, I have enough to go off of, especially given that they've won 2 straight. That's important, right? Because it's working. I have enough to go off of to where I don't see anything changing today. I think Dowdle is, I would honestly, if you ask me who gets more carries in this game, Ezekiel Elliott or Hunter Lipke, I would say Hunter Lipke. I'm not even kidding.
I don't think that's crazy. The only point I'm making is there's more risk with Mike McCarthy. I have negative respect for Mike McCarthy as a coach. The fact that Jerry even brought him back this season was an absolute disaster. He's been horrific at evaluating talent all season long. Like 2 of your most dynamic players, Rico Dowdle and Kevontae Turpin, haven't even been playing the whole year in timeshares with the dustiest old veterans you could possibly think of, just because Ezekiel Elliott at one point was the face of your franchise. So I don't know. There's at least that risk that Mike McCarthy is a moron. That is proven over time for a long, long time. So I think Dowdle carries like a little extra risk than Chase Brown. I mean, so to me, it's like, does ownership make up for that gap? Because Chase Brown's still playing on a favorite with a better workload. Their game script projects to be a lot better. I'm not sure. I think it's close. Like Chase Brown at 60%, Dowdle at 44. The way I look at it is I think I'd rather just play Cooper Rush for 200 less and CeeDee Lamb and avoid all of the Mike McCarthy nonsense. Because you're not, like, their ownership is almost the same for all the Dallas guys. But I don't think he's a bad play. I do think the most likely situation is he continues with the workload he's had, but he's going to have more barriers than some other players on this, like game script being one of them, his coach being a second. I think I would prefer Rush and CeeDee Lamb.
Okay, fair enough.
And yeah, I mean, you can
definitely
make
think I like
lineups with
that.
all of them. It's not like if you're playing 150, me saying I prefer one versus the other. It's not like I'm playing 0 Dowdle, you know?
Oh, obvious. I like Dowdle more than you do, for sure, in this game, but I can understand where you're coming from. Like, let's see, and of course, Chase Brown is going to project better, but let's see what rushing plus receiving is. Now
It's
I'm
going to be
curious.
pretty decent, I would imagine. This defense on the other side is awful, so it could just come down to touchdowns.
102.5 for Chase Brown. That's a big number, dude. 102.5 for Chase Brown. 90.5 for Rico Dowdle, though. It's not bad. He's minus 110 to score as well. I like both of those guys. I mean, really, you'd be hard pressed to get me away from any of these top skill players. Like, this is one of those days where I believe I'm going to have a lot of everybody. And when I say that, I mean just exposure across the board to Jamar. And this might sound like just, kind of like lukewarm takes on everybody, but it's not, because Chase is great. Chase Brown is great. Higgins is great. Dowdle's workload, I'm more confident in Dowdle's workload than you are, but I get where you're coming from. Dowdle, CeeDee Lamb, and then of course Burrow and even Cooper Rush. Like, to me, I'd still put Cooper Rush at the bottom of all of those guys. It sounds like you would put Dowdle below Cooper Rush at the bottom.
Right now, I think factoring in ownership, Cooper Rush is a little safer, but I don't feel super strongly about that. That's kind of a lukewarm take for me right now. I'm not sure where I'll end up with Dowdle, Rush, and CD. Honestly, I might just end up with more of all 3 of them because I'm probably going to try to come down a little bit on the Cincinnati stuff. But I don't know. We'll see on that. Things are going to change throughout the day, especially with, like, the dog is taking money in this game. The over's taking money in this game. We'll see where it ends up throughout the day. But man, some of these guys we're talking about, are these two of the worst run franchises in the NFL?
Without question. Yeah.
They
They,
have
they,
to be.
they and no, I don't think it's even a question.
Both of them mess up contracts routinely. Both of them are horrible in the draft. And Dallas is horrible with their picks outside the draft, like trading for Mingo. They traded for Trey Lance. They gave up draft picks for both of those players. Outside of this year, where, I mean, Cincinnati still invested a ton on defense in the draft, in 2022 and 2023, their first, second, and third round picks were all defenders, and they all suck. Like, they're surrounding Joe Burrow with nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the Bears are up there. And then another one, though, you can't, the New York Giants.
The Bears. Oh, yeah, the Giants. What they did with Daniel Jones. And I mean, I remember that draft. People were screaming from the rafters not to take Daniel Jones at number 5 or 6 or whatever pick it was.
And then they paid him.
That was the dumbest thing they did. They've missed on a ton of draft picks too.
It's bad. They're the only team that's officially been eliminated in the NFC. Like, technically have not been eliminated yet. It's remarkable.
Man, like, if the Bengals didn't have Chase, Higgins, and Burrow, this team would be like, I don't know, bottom 3 team in the NFL. Dallas has at least hit on some picks. Like, they've drafted some talented players like Parsons and stuff, but I mean, they're also live to mess up something every single year. They've been mocked to Ashton Genty a ton already this year, early mocks, which would just be hilarious and poetic. And the cycle continues if they draft a running back that high.
Oh my God, wouldn't that be something else? Yeah, that would be
incredible. It would be amazing.
You know, it's almost worse. It is worse when you see a team, like when you talk about mismanagement and how poorly they've been run. What I'm saying though is it's the Dallas Cowboys and Bengals stand out because there's so much talent and they still find ways to have massive holes in the team, right?
Well, Dallas luckbox Dak.
For sure. But even so, like, you could argue a lot of teams luckbox the guy, but then turn them into something great and build a good team around him, right? With them, they just find ways to lose. So I'll ask you this. Who's the worst run team in the league? The
Bears.
New York, what?
The Bears.
Worse than the Jets?
I actually kind of liked the Jets' approach this year. I think it was really high variance.
What about the Raiders?
They might be up there, yeah. I didn't think about the Raiders right away.
The Raiders find ways to,
like, remember the Jets in the preseason? They were favored to win the division at one point.
Yeah.
A lot of it hinged on Rodgers not being complete dust, but they took that shot and he was complete dust, and they got like a bottom outcome from that decision. But
nah, you're right. What did they trade for what did they give up for Devontae Adams?
That was stupid. I think you had enough information to realize it wasn't happening.
That's why I'm asking. Yeah.
And they made some very hasty coaching decisions, I think. Like, their defense has imploded since Saleh left. Do you think
it was a conditional 3rd round pick. So I don't even care about that, actually. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
Do you think Dallas wins another playoff game before Jerry's death?
Wow. Dude, that's a great question. Well, here's the thing. I'm going to say yes, because there's something about me that believes behind the scenes they've got Jerry Jones on some stuff. Like, he may live to 150.
Yeah, they've got some good assets too. They just clean some stuff up a little bit. Having Dak and CD. Now, the way they've paid for some of these guys is not leaving them a lot of wiggle room, but that's a Parsons. Like, they have some talent.
They got him on the adrenochrome. I'm telling you.
And also, like, all you really have to do, I mean, this isn't a good thing, I guess, for them. All you have to do to make the playoffs is win the division.
How crazy would it be, though, if he died and then he died in like early January one year and they went and won the Super Bowl?
It would be wild. I think they have the longest NFC like championship playoff drought for a while now. Do they not? I saw this stat a while back. It's been a long time since they went to the NFC championship.
Yeah, very long time. Is it like the 90s?
Wild, considering they've squandered Romo and now Dak. He drinks baby blood.
Yeah, that's adrenochrome, but you don't. I mean, I would assume it's a more refined process than that. Last time, 1995.
Oh, I was 2.
I was, what, 7? All right. We went through all the top options here. Let's talk a little bit about what we've got going on with some of the value. So and we'll build a lineup out using the single lineup sim as well. Tell you guys how you can get that if you joined us late. But if we're talking cheap guys, yes, you have like the Hunter Lipke's, who knows? Maybe he gets some work. He's essentially minimum salary. You've got guys like Jalen Brooks. Now, also, I think the price is wildly prohibitive on Brandon Cooks. I don't really understand that salary, but he is back for the second week. My guess is that his snap count continues to increase from last week. He was targeted on like 6 of 20 routes that he ran or something like that. You have to go down a little bit further though. You know, you have the Fergusons, the Mike Gesicki's. I'm just going sub the dead zone, Matt. So if I can set this up for you and get your thoughts, we get weeks like this that are weird on showdowns where if you get below Cooper Rush, right? So there's 7 players of 8,800 and higher. If you go below Cooper Rush, Brandon Cooks is the only one from 7,900 down to 5,700 who isn't a backup quarterback.
And he probably shouldn't be that price tag.
I think he should be the same price as, say, Ferguson.
We have Ferguson projected significantly better than Cooks, like 3 full points. So
and he should be. But I don't think you can put Cooks at like 3K either.
I think Cooks is almost unplayable.
So do I.
Like he's worth Xing out. We'll see where his ownership comes in. If he's going to be like 5% or something, then maybe you could make the argument. But you're looking at such a vast gap between him and Ferguson and some of the other players in this range. I don't think it really makes sense to play him. He basically is the same projection as Yoshivas.
Well, the opportunity cost there is crazy because it's like, okay, 7K for Brandon Cooks, or I can pay 2,000 more for Dowdle.
For sure. And I mean, to explain the projection, we don't know how many snaps he's going to play. Even with an increase, what is that? 60%?
I was just going to say, I think 60% is a fair number for Brandon Cooks this week.
I think what we can definitively say is it's not going to be 90, which is what it needs to be for this price tag to hit. So yeah, he's very tricky to play. I think just overall, you want to be looking at both kickers. They project better than the defenses on a slate like this. I think that's largely because the total's so high and you have really bad defenses on both sides. For tournaments, I would be a little more interested in the defenses and shaving off some of the just overall salary you're spending. We mentioned the mismatch for Dallas. It wouldn't be all that surprising to see them rack up sacks, which can help you. They're only 3,600, so it's pretty easy to play them. And Cincinnati's defense stinks, but you're still facing a backup quarterback who has imploded already this season. I don't think that's the craziest thing. Otherwise, the skill position players down here are pretty risky. Ferguson's by far my favorite at 5,400. I don't think you really see a lot of 2 tight ends anymore. Ferguson was on a concussion, so now that he's had, the 2 weeks, it should be fine for him returning. I think you could even pencil him in as the second most involved pass catcher for this team. I have a lot more interest in him than like a Gesicki or Yoshivas, just because so much of those targets are going to T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. They're more like tournament options. And I think my second favorite one is just Jalen Brooks because he's so cheap. He's not going to be targeted very often, but he's been on the field the most as their third wide receiver. And he's just a salary saver. He's like the glue that makes everything work. Just give me like 2 targets at his price tag to allow me to play all the studs.
You know, with Cooks, Matt, there are a couple of questions asking about his receiving yard prop. I actually bet it earlier in the week. It popped up in the portfolio EV tool at 24.5. I have no problem taking a shot on that. Plus, like I said, he was targeted on 30% of the routes run. Of course, Brandon Cooks CD missed the fourth quarter of that game. But when you look at props compared to everything else, it's a lot different. Like, yes, if you wanted exposure to Brandon Cooks in this game, bet his over 26.5 receiving yards. But also at 7, like if you were to base his salary, his DFS salary off of his props today, he'd be nowhere close to 7K. Nowhere close. So he has a 26.5 yard receiving prop. That's crazy. So
Yeah, if he hits the over at 27.5, all of your lineups are dead if you played him.
exactly. He has the same receiving prop as Jalen Tolbert.
So I'm saying we gotta play some Tolbert, we gotta play some dusty receivers down here for Dallas. I think I might have said Jalen Brooks. I was trying to talk about Tolbert.
I got you. Yeah. I mean, there is a Jalen Brooks, but there's also a Jalen Cropper. They got three Jalen, right, wide receivers. But I and then Flournoy didn't play. Flournoy didn't play last week. Do you think Turpin? Do you think there's anything there, or does he just go like with Brooks seeing a more expanded role, or Cook, sorry, expected to see a more expanded role? Do you think Turpin is more so just like relegated back to all special teams with maybe like, because also CeeDee Lamb missed some of that second half. My guess is Turpin goes back to not really seeing much of anything in the passing game.
His role hasn't really changed that much all year long. You're looking at like 20 to 30% of the snaps. He comes in and on his plays, he'll have like 2 or 3 designed plays for him. I don't understand why he doesn't play more. Maybe this is like him grasping the playbook thing as a special teamer. I don't know what his handle is on the actual offensive snaps. He's been like the only dynamic player for this team in the last couple weeks.
I know.
So why is he like, why are we playing Jalen Brooks? Why are we playing Flournoy? Mingo had 34% of the snaps last week. They're very different players. So perhaps there's just a package they want Mingo on the field for. And the diminutive Kevontae Turpin just can't do those things. But Mingo's been horrible at whatever those things are. Like, I just don't understand why Turpin's not on the field more. He's actually been a dynamic playmaker for you. Anyway, at his price, I have some relative interest because you just don't have a lot of options. It's like Tolbert down there playing a lot more. Their opportunities are probably similar because even though Turpin's at like 25% of the snaps, when he's on the field, he gets a couple design plays every single game. When I'm punting off lineups at the bottom end, it's probably going to be these two players more than anyone else.
Yeah, I would go Turpin for sure, but at the same time, all right. So, who would you prefer? You don't have to like these guys, but who would you prefer? Turpin at $200 more than Tolbert, or Tolbert at 2,800, who you know is probably at least going to be on the field?
I would prefer Tolbert at price.
Me too. It's just funny though, and you kind of alluded to this. Tolbert's been no good, yet they continue. He's been no good, man. They continue to give him a lot of work, but I still think just based on the fact that he's going to be on the field, he's probably the guy you have to look towards.
That's why I'm like wondering who's making the decisions here. Like you decide Dowdle's been efficient enough over Ezekiel Elliott where we need to play him more now.
Right.
But it's like all your receivers are horrible. And then you actually have like, okay, Turpin comes in and he's electric on all his plays, but we can't find more snaps for him. And, chat's on this right now. Mingo, 10 targets over the last 3 games. He's playing a lot of snaps. He's been horrible when he's on the field. But they traded for him. I mean, like I don't know if this is their front office coming down and being like, play Mingo. We need to see what he has. We spend something for him. There's just no other explanation for Mingo getting a snap.
Dude, they gave up.
Didn't they give up a third for him?
I thought they gave up something outrageous.
I mean, anything is outrageous.
Yeah, there's the team to take him. Yeah, a 4th round pick.
A 4th, okay.
They got a 7th back, but it doesn't matter. Like maybe they do just decide that they want to use him more.
Well, going down the list, I think Mingo needs to be 3rd in this value like cohort because it seems like they're trying to see what they have. So like Tolbert is locked into his role to some extent. He'll play the most. He's not good, but we need value down here anyway. Turpin's a little more expensive, but he has those packages. You're kind of knowing coming in, you're getting 3 touches regardless of snaps and maybe more plus the special teams. Mingo, I think, is the most volatile because he's been awful, but they've clearly been trying to see what they have. So I think these are your top 3 value guys in that order.
Do we agree, though, that below the dead zone, Jake Ferguson is the top guy, though?
Oh, yeah. I'm talking like 3K on.
Right. I wanted to make sure. I agree fully. And then because you look at the backup running backs, there's not much here unless you're taking just like total blind shots on a Khalil Herbert or a Hunter Lipke, or if you think Elliott gets back on the field and Mike McCarthy goes full Mike McCarthy, like you've talked about, I could understand some of that being the case, but the value would be really just with the cheap pass catchers. And I'm not referring to like kickers here, because I think, kickers are always going to be in play. Brandon Aubrey is insane. That guy's nuts. And Cade York, at his price point, I'm getting a good amount of Cade York. I think both kickers here are totally viable. And to your point, if you just wanted to get weird and different, yeah, defenses as well. I'm getting around 10 to 15% of defense at the flex, nothing at captain. Not surprised by that. But it's really all the value, what I'm getting at, like all the value, if you're going to there, is it pass catcher.
And it's all on the Dallas side.
Yep.
Maybe
Unless you're looking at like a Yoshivash, who isn't even that cheap.
No, that's the problem with him. You're in defense kicker range when you play Yoshivas. He's live, I think, for tournaments. You could make a stand with him as your leverage point, but he's going to be like fourth on the team in terms of target distribution, maybe third if you think he's ahead of Jasicki, who's not a good value price adjusted either. And then you just run out of value options, especially if you're of the mind that Cincinnati goes all out 100%. I lean that direction because of that 4% playoff chance. They completely trim the fat on all their pass catchers. Jermaine Burton, 2 snaps. He's generally the guy I like taking shots on down here because of his skill set. Maybe he pops back up to like a 20% of the routes. That's a little more volatile than the Dallas side. Last week, they played Isaiah Williams 3 snaps as their wide receiver 5. You're going to have to watch inactives on this because Charlie Jones potentially could return from his 4-game absence. He did log some limited practices. I do think he would be active over Isaiah Williams. But I mean, how many snaps would Charlie Jones play? Like 4, 5?
I don't think you can really go to any of those guys.
The best one's probably Sample, and he's just so uninvolved as a pass catcher.
Yeah, I was just going to say, this is a Bengals team that when they do weird stuff, it's never, and by weird, I mean like that freak 50-yard receiving game and a touchdown. It's usually not by the tertiary receivers. It's by one of these non-Mike Gesicki tight ends. And I mean, you mentioned Sample. What about the fact though that Tanner Hudson's basically the same, or basically the same price. Tanner Hudson plays like no snaps, but he's the type of guy that sometimes you just go, oh, nice, Mike Gesicki, I have him. And you go, oh, shit. It's one of the other 3 white tight ends that is out there getting opportunities in the, I'm serious, right? Like you look at Tanner Hudson over the last 3 games, he's played 29 snaps, 9 snaps, and 12 snaps. He has 7, 2, and 4 targets. So he literally doesn't see the field more than 10 snaps a game. But when he's out, like he had 4 targets on 12 snaps, 2 on 9, and then 7 on 29 over his last 3 games.
He doesn't block, dude. All he does is run routes.
Right.
The only thing that might lead you astray here is the tight end position designation. He basically is like a Mike Gesicki fill-in. He does not block ever. This is no hyperbole. He is like almost no blocking snaps all year. All he does is run routes. I mean, I don't see it all that different from playing like Jermaine Burton, because if they're both playing wide receiver and running routes, like you still need to draw a target on a very small route tree. But yeah, I hear you. Hudson, it's crazy we have to talk about these guys, but that's just how dry value is. I don't think Hudson's out of play. He's a little thin compared to the Dallas value, but I mean, he should be in your pool. And Sample's almost the exact opposite. He'll play a ton of snaps, but he's running single-digit routes because he's blocking so much.
Isn't it nuts, though, that if you look at just targets over the last 3 games, Hudson has 13. Gesicki has 16.
That's very surprising.
Right?
I don't have an explanation.
Me neither. Gesicki's still the better option there, but I would actually prefer Hudson over Sample.
I think I'm there.
Anyone we haven't talked about yet?
I don't think so. Watch inactives for Cincinnati because I'm not sure on the Charlie Jones stuff. I don't know if it matters. Also, like, how many skill position players does Dallas have active? They had 6 receivers in their last game, 3 tight ends. I mean, a fullback in Lepke. This team is doing weird stuff with their roster. They've been keeping 6 receivers up regularly, which is a bit surprising to me. Cincinnati usually will do like 5 receivers. Most teams do 5. But yeah, that's about it. You have more rotation at receiver for Dallas because they keep a 6 receiver active, which is uncommon.
What do you say we build a lineup?
Yeah, it's gonna be an interesting one today. A lot of ways you can go. Let's do it.
I haven't built any. Have you?
I have built some. I've been playing
Okay.
around with these like contrarian Dallas builds. Projections don't love them right now.
Arcatel said, what about defense and kickers? Yeah, we talked to, I think the kickers are perfectly fine here. I'm actually getting to a lot more Cade York though than I am Aubrey.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense from the team total perspective.
Sure.
I guess to sum it up, kickers are very strong plays on today's slate. I think for 2 reasons. Totals high, defenses stink, and you're lacking value. So when you don't have like a 200 or maybe even like a $2,000 player, you can just put in your lineup. Kickers are the safest options. Defenses are interesting if you want to make a stand for tournaments. They're both suspect, but Dallas at least has a good pass rush facing that horrible Cincinnati offensive line that's hurt. And then you've got Cooper Rush on the other side. I wouldn't be surprised to see either defense succeed.
Let's see what we can do. Pull up the single lineup sim and let's make it happen. By the way, like I said, guys, earlier in the show, you want access to all of these tools, that first link, follow those steps, sign up on any with our sportsbook partners and get the core monthly for free. It's $100 value. You get as many months as you want, depending on how many of our partners you sign up with. It's crazy. Or you'll see Stokastic plus NFL down there. Let's say you just wanted to try out a week of the light subscription, because we have the essentials, light, core, and max. With the light, you're getting the single lineup sim and the projections and ownership and all of that stuff. With core, you're getting a whole lot more plus the actual sims. So there's two amazing ways to do it, to get in on this, whether you want to try a week or a month, or you just are like, hey, I want the free month. Well, right there, that first link down there will get it for you when you follow up all of those 4 easy steps with any of those sports books. I've said it a million times, but like if you're ever trying to get in on tools to make better lineups, to win more money. Nate said it earlier in the show that he used it last week. It's the best week he's had all season on both sites. And you're going to see a lot of that. Wally Balls has won like 48 tournaments in the past week. Not saying that's going to be you, but it totally transformed the way you play, the way you look at DFS. And it takes you into like the evolutionized style of DFS in 2024, soon to be 2025. But you can also still do a lot of things that you love doing. Hand build lineups, get instant feedback when we sim them against this simulated field. You can still run the sims and make your adjustments on ROI boost and player caps and set exposure caps and uniques and all of that stuff. Adjust projections, all of the things that you've wanted to do. Now you can do it, except know that when you're getting these lineups, they're good lineups that you're playing or they're bad. And you know that every time before you ever submit them into a contest. So links down there in the description, whether it's Stokastic NFL or join any of the sportsbook, get sims free. You'll see them both down there. All right, Matt, let's build a lineup. And my DMs are always open on Twitter if you have questions. Who do you want to go at captain? You could go myriad ways here.
Yeah, are we playing large field? Where are we playing?
Let's do large field. Yeah, large field, 15% to first.
All right, let's use like a Dowdle.
I love that. I
think for a small field, you want to pick a Bengals guy, and if you're playing only one lineup or a couple of them. But for large field, I think Dallas is really interesting.
I'm going to go Higgins.
I'll go Joe Burrow. I think he's very safe. I love him in the flex.
Can we go Chase Brown here and see what happens?
You can. You're going to have to probably punt off one thing and then play maybe a kicker or defense, something like that. But I built lineups. You can make this work.
All right. So let's see it then. Look, the whole point of this isn't for us to get the best lineup ever. I mean, it'd be nice, but ultimately we're trying to see what works and what doesn't.
Absolutely. I'll put Tolbert in.
Okay. I think that's a necessary evil here. Let's go Tolbert. That gives us 2,800 or 4,800, 41. If I go Cade York.
You can't play Cade York in this lineup.
Oh, we only have one left. My fault. I thought we had 4,100 per 2. Let's try Bengals defense.
All right. And then I have a 2v2 for you if we have time.
Sweet. Yeah, let's do it. See what we get. Okay, we'll take it.
What was it? I missed it.
60%. That's good for a
60% is not
showdown.
bad. All right. The 2v2 is removing Bengals defense and Tolbert. Then we put in Cade York and Tanner Hudson. It's a really weird build. It's a 5-1 with Dowdle at the captain.
Removing Tolbert and who?
Tolbert in the defense.
And then adding
Cade York and Tanner Hudson.
ooh. Nice. 88%, Matt.
I thought with the kicker it might sim better.
Yep, you're absolutely right. All right, now let's try one more thing before we go. Let's go at captain, Chase Brown, and build one out from there before we go.
All right, Chase Brown. Man, this is going to be a tough one.
It will. That's why I want to see what it looks like.
All right, so Chase Brown is their second most owned player right now. I'm going to throw in CeeDee Lamb.
So we're going to go Chase Brown. We're going to go CeeDee Lamb. You know what? Give me Cooper Rush here.
All right, Cooper Rush. So we're looking at Dallas stuff. I'm going to play Ferguson.
I like that. 5,200. All right. Can we go? If you go Higgins, you have 900 remaining. That leaves us with nothing but Hunter Lipke. Let's just, okay, here's a fun one. Let's just, for the sake of it, let's see what it looks like with Dowdle in there. And then you're either going, like, it doesn't give you much. It would be like oh God, there's not much at all, huh?
I would throw it at maybe Burton or Elliott.
That's really tough. This actually doesn't leave us with much at all.
No, what the Sims I imagine will like is Cade York and like Jasicki or double kicker.
I think that's probably, well, even if I wanted to throw T. Higgins or Dowdle in there, it's terrible down there.
That's what I'm saying. So the kind of big idea of the slate is you can only play 3 studs.
Yeah.
If you're playing 4, you're going to punt it off twice with the kind of lineups we just built in our first 2 run. But the second you do something like this, and then you want to play Ferguson as well, you run out of money.
All right, so let's do it then. Let's try Cade York and Mike Gesicki.
All right. I don't think this is going to be bad.
This is why, by the way, I like doing this to close out every show, because it really just shows us what we can and can't do.
Well, I mean, I know some people kind of diss us for making bad lineups on here. This is literally, for me, kind of just taking my process I do off the screen and putting it on screen. I'm just like testing things out all morning.
Yep. 59%.
That's not bad.
Not bad at all. But it does show us, like, it's not, jamming 4 studs is not really a thing. So let's close the show with this. By the way, as always, appreciate you guys being with us today. Follow Matt at Matt_Gajewski and me at Laffy_D. Obi-Wan said, very helpful, Laffy. Thanks, man. Yeah, we're trying. And Arcatelza said, this is ugly. You're going to be building some ugly lineups for sure. I'm not going to build one here because a lot of you guys have the single lineup sim anyway. Plus, you can get it for free. What do you think? Like, do you think it's doable to build cheap at captain? And what does it look? The only guy I think that would even make sense at captain would be, as crazy as this sounds, like a Cade York or something.
I think Cade York, maybe Ferguson would be the other one I bring up.
Probably, yeah.
But generally speaking, and I think our Sims back this up, I'm scrolling through lineups right now. I don't get a lot of cheap captain. And kind of my just general thoughts on this have been, all right, well, like I'm not the only one, you aren't either, that has thought of, okay, let's put in a cheap captain with a narrow range of outcomes so we can jam all the studs. Then you run into a situation where price adjusted, a guy who's way less involved still has to outscore the studs that are way more involved. And people generally try to do this more than they should. We're not the only ones that have this idea. A lot of those lineups are generally duplicated, or sims bear that out. So it's like, okay, you're probably running into duplication problems because everyone who plays like a Ferguson lineup is doing it to get the studs. Then you need the guy to play well, price adjusted, over guys that are way higher projected. So it's just like you're kind of working through a parlay of sorts to even have that work out.
Yep. Everyone's going to want to do the same thing. Everyone's going to want to do the same thing.
It's like if you play Tolbert captain, it's like, all right, CD, Jamar, Burrow, like,
yeah,
that's what the lineup is going to be.
You're going to have like 5 different variations of the Tolbert. Like that's what it's going to be. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks guys. Have a great rest of the day. You back here with me tonight?
Yes, I am.
Sweet. Monday Night Football, baby. Let's go. Shout out to Jordan for producing this one. You guys have a great rest of the day. Hit us up on Twitter. Come say hello and check us out on the Odd Shopper channel. Matt's got the college stuff. I got all the NFL stuff. Ben's got great stuff every day. All of us. Eric, you name it. Come on, Odd Shopper. Say hi. Hit us with a subscribe there. Otherwise, we'll see you back here tonight. Peace.